origins deep in prehistoric antiquity. At the base of the entire ancient Egyptian state and religious system lay ideas and knowledge obtained from some even more ancient, highly developed civilization. Tracks leading back to it run through all stages of ancient Egyptian history, to the place where we find the first historical mention of a pyramid, to the times of the legendary Atlantis that was later swallowed by a terrible flood. Let us go back 15,000 years to the historical period that the ancient Egyptian texts call the first time, Zep Tepi, or the era of the Netheru. The word Netheru, translated as gods, has a complex internal structure. The descriptions of the Netheru in the texts indicate that they were human beings with godlike abilities. It was these beings who gave people knowledge of mathematics, architecture, astronomy and medicine, of the structure of the solar system, of cyclical processes, and the principles lying at the foundation of the universe. Now let us move across to the Mesopotamian region, to the land of the Sumerians, the territory of present-day Iraq and Syria. This is not a random move. There too people built pyramidal edifices, the stepped ziggurats. The surviving written texts and legends of the ancient Sumerians also contain many mentions of some highly developed civilization that descended to earth from the heavens and collaborated closely with the elite of Sumer. The interaction between gods and humans became so close that a number of ancient texts speak openly of the gods having sexual relations with earthly maidens. The result was the birth of children with unusual genetic abilities, described in legends as demigods, who went on to become rulers of the land of Sumer. There is no counting the scientific achievements and technical innovations of the Sumerians, who devoted particular attention to the study of the sky and heavenly bodies, as well as of the Nephilim, the gods that descended to earth from the heavens. Zechariah Sitchin, a leading specialist in the translation of the Sumerian language, pointing out inexactitudes in the rendering of ancient texts, wrote in The Stairway to Heaven, "We shall immediately state that neither the Akkadians nor the Sumerians called these beings from the sky God. Only much later in the era of paganism did the concept of divine beings or gods penetrate into the thinking, and also into the language of the ancient peoples. The Akkadians called those from the sky Ilu, the High Ones. The Canaanites and the Phoenicians called them Baal, lords or wanderers beyond the clouds. It would seem that the Netheru of the ancient Egyptians and the Nephilim of the Sumerians are travellers from another planet. Is such a thing possible? It's hard to believe, harder still to consider the logical consequences. After all, in school and in higher education, our teachers gave and are still giving a completely different version of history. But if it is so, where exactly did these Netheru or Baal come from? Do the Egyptian writings contain at least some mention, some hint that would throw light on this? Yes, there is something. Let's return to Egypt, to the Valley of the Kings. We're going to visit the tomb of Ramesses VI, a pharaoh of the 20th dynasty during the New Kingdom period. We go inside to the upper level J, to the central part of the right-hand wall. The figure in the center is the sun, hence the golden yellow color of his body. The phallus and semen allude to the giving of life. Look again. Running through the center of the figure is a curved line. That's an orbit. It passes through the third chakra, the solar plexus, which is a direct indication of the position of the orbit. Two planets are shown on this orbit, one in front of the figure, the other behind. This composition plainly states that on the orbit of the Earth, the third out from the Sun, two planets are moving, the Earth and some other body. The Sun looks at the Earth, the size, mass of which is less than the size of the planet behind the Sun's back. It is located diametrically opposite us behind the Sun, so we cannot see it. Evidently the Egyptians were seeking to set down for perpetuity information obtained from the Netheru. It therefore survived not only on the walls of the tombs in the Valley of the Kings, but also in the cosmogony of the Pythagorean Philolaus, who asserted too that behind the Sun, which he called Hestia, the central hearth, there was a body similar to our own planet, the counter-Earth, or anti-Earth. Curious sightings recorded by astronomers early on the morning of the 25th of January 1662, Gian Domenico Cassini, the director of the Paris Observatory, discovered close to Venus an unknown crescent-shaped body that cast a shadow, a direct indication that this was a large planet and not a star. Venus too was crescent-shaped at that moment, and at first Cassini believed that he had found a satellite of the second planet. The body was of a very large size. Cassini estimated its diameter as a quarter that of Venus. He made his next record of observing this planet in 1672. 14 years later, on the 18th of August 1686, Cassini saw the same body again, an event he recorded in his diary. On the 23rd of October 1740, shortly before sunrise, the mysterious planet was spotted by James Short, a member of the Royal Society of Science and an amateur astronomer. Aiming his telescope at Venus, he saw very close to it a starlet. Pointing another telescope at it that had a magnification of 50 to 60 times and was fitted with a micrometer, he determined its distance from Venus, which was around 10.2 degrees. He could see Venus exceptionally clearly. The air was very clear, and so Short took a look at this starlet at a magnification of 240 times, and, to his enormous surprise, discovered that it was in the same phase as Venus. That is to say, Venus and the mysterious planet were lit by our Sun, and the planet had the same kind of crescent-shaped shadow as could be observed on the visible disk of Venus. The apparent diameter of the planet was roughly a third that of Venus. The next observation was made on the 20th of May 1759 by the astronomer Andreas Mayer in Greifswald, Germany. The year 1761 was the year when the counter-Earth was seen most often. In 1764 the mysterious planet was seen by Rødkjær on the 3rd of January 1768. It was observed by Christian Horrebow of Copenhagen. The latest observation was made on the 13th of August 1892, when the American astronomer Edward Emerson Barnard spotted close to Venus, where there were no stars with which the sighting might have been associated, an unknown object of the 7th stellar magnitude. Then the planet went back behind the Sun. The distance from Earth to the counter-Earth is so great that, bearing in mind the size of the Sun and the effects it produces, a fairly large heavenly body can be lost in the space behind the Sun, remaining invisible for long periods of time. The crescent body showing from behind the Sun is the 12th planet, which was lacking for an elegant and stable picture of the structure of the solar system that would accord with, among other things, the ancient texts. The Sumerians incidentally claimed that it was from the 12th planet of the solar system that the gods of sky and earth descended to Earth. It should be stressed that the location of this planet on our orbit behind the Sun places it in the sphere favourable to life. In contrast to the planet Marduk, according to Sitchin, whose orbital period of 3,600 years and orbit going way beyond the belt of life, and the solar system's limits make the existence of life there impossible. Such a turn of events is admittedly rather puzzling, but then gradually everything begins to fit into place. Therefore, the first conclusion from what has been stated that we shall set in a prominent place is that the source of the ancients' knowledge would seem to have been extraterrestrial in origin. This forces us to radically reassess our attitude to the surviving works of antiquity, as they probably contain priceless information about the world around us, humanity, the true history of Earth, and our astonishing ancestors. We now have a basic idea of the source of knowledge, and can move on to the next stage, considering the reasons for the construction of the pyramids. In order to understand the interests of the ancients and the role that the pyramids played in attaining those interests, you will need to do what no one before you has done: form a basic conception about the fate of our civilization. This will not be easy, but do not look for easy paths on the way to truth. If you decide to listen to the loud and contradictory host of conventional historians, your chances of discovering the truth in this life will be nil. Employ your own mind and logic and you will have a chance, albeit a tiny one. To this end, let us return to the very start of this history which, as you have already managed to note, has clear extraterrestrial origins. For that reason, we should not consider what took place on Earth in isolation from what took place in the solar system. Everything here is interconnected. Let us turn the astronomical clock back 15,000 years. Despite the fact that interaction between Earthlings and the Netheru by that time already had a very considerable history, this contact was never open, still less universal in character. For the majority of Earth's population that knew of the existence of the Netheru, they remained mysterious with the aura of demigods. This situation suited the Netheru because the Earthlings' attitude of veneration towards them as divine provided unlimited opportunities to accomplish their own interests, some of which were of a thoroughly practical nature. Contact between the Netheru and Earthlings began long before the events described, and was initiated by the Netheru themselves in the process of their exploration of the planets of the solar system. In that unarguably highly promising period in the development of the system, the zone of life contained 3 planets with life in their atmospheres: Mars, the home of the Netheru, Phaeton, Maldek, and Earth. Anyone with astronomical knowledge would immediately notice the somewhat different structure of the planetary system at that time. First, all 3 life-bearing planets were located closer to the Sun, so their climates were considerably warmer. But that is not all that set apart the harmony of spheres at that time from what we have today. Second, there was no moon next to the Earth and no Venus. The general mood in the solar system was highly optimistic. The development of the central planets, Mars and Phaeton, Maldek, was proceeding apace. The Earth lagged somewhat behind this pair, but there was interaction with it too, albeit at a low level. Long before the events we described, the civilization on Mars, and later on Phaeton too, discovered artifacts of their respective planets that pointed to life elsewhere in the galaxy. The study of these artifacts, all manner of technically produced objects like those now scattered across Yakutia in northeastern Siberia, gave a powerful impetus to the development of civilization. With time, this development reached fantastic levels. It would be no exaggeration to say that were the majority of Earth's inhabitants today to witness the genius, technical achievements, and parapsychological abilities of the Netheru at that time, admiration and an almost religious ecstasy would be evoked in them. The Netheru's level of development was so high that our contemporary science would simply be unable to accept it, although more than enough staggering facts have already been accumulated. In our opinion, the most mind-blowing physical evidence of the scientific and technical genius of the Netheru is the gigantic underground complex of meteorite and asteroid defenses constructed in what is now western Siberia. This complex, constructed thousands of years ago, mention of which survives in the Yakut national epic, still functions today in an automatic mode. It was this complex that destroyed the Tunguska meteorite in 1908, the Sikhote-Alin meteorite in 1947, the Chulim bolide in 1984, and the Vitim meteorite on the night of the 24th of September 2002. This asteroid defense system was the result of the Netheru's study of the, to a large extent tragic, history of the solar system. The fact is that on its journey through the galaxy, our planetary gyroscope passes cyclically, once in 33 million years, as it crosses the plane of the galaxy through a meteor stream. Incidentally, 65 million years ago this stream killed off all the dinosaurs. More than once this deadly rain has destroyed life forms on Earth that were capable of developing intelligence. Just the thought of what heights civilization in the solar system could have reached under the guidance of the Netheru is thrilling. The Earth in that remote first time was something like an associate member of the Netheru civilization, but there was no comparison between the levels of development of the Netheru and Earthlings. There was an imbalance that would subsequently play a role in the fate of the Earth and the solar system, but that is not to say that the Earth was abandoned on the outer fringes of civilization. preparation of Earthlings for more profound contact with the Neferu began with the formation of an elite capable of grasping the Neferu's ideology and conveying it to the people. To this end, the representatives of the Neferu made direct contact with the leaders of tribal alliances living in those parts of the globe in which the Neferu had particular interest. A striking example is provided by the rich natural resources of Hyperborea, a huge island once located at the very north of the Earth, and the adjoining enormous territories of the north of the Eurasian Plateau. In those remote times, the climate of the northern part of the planet was considerably warmer than it is now. Making direct contact with tribal leaders of Hyperborea, the Neferu supported them in their struggles against other tribal alliances. In this way, the first state appeared. The establishment and development of Hyperborea began with the moment when the Neferu started mining uranium ore at their colony in Hyperborea, which is mentioned in Mesopotamian texts as the land of mines, and was located on what is now the Kola Peninsula. The next stage was the creation of a planet-wide communication system that provided the Neferu with extensive opportunities to stimulate the development of Earthlings' minds. To accomplish this highly complex task, a certain group of powerful Earthlings was given instructions on how to build structures in which they would be able to hear the voice of God, the Neferu, and communicate with him. Through visits to the House of God, Pyramid, on the days appointed by the gods, the chosen ones would receive knowledge of divine origin. Using this knowledge, they would be able to improve their health, acquire exceptional abilities, listen to the universe, and see places elsewhere on Earth and beyond. In brief, the priests understood that the gods had chosen them for a great mission, and that every step, every new achievement would bring them closer to the gods and the supernatural qualities that the gods possessed. Tremendous prospects opened up before human beings, the significance of which exceeded any efforts required for their accomplishment, and they began working with a will. People started building pyramids in various parts of the world according to the plans and instructions given by the gods. The unprecedented efforts of the Earthlings and, importantly, the Earthlings' own hands created a complex that embraced the whole Earth in a spiral running from south to north. The complex of structures included pyramids, steles, dolmens, hills, and mountaintops that were given a pyramidal shape. All the elements of the complex were erected on specially selected elevated features connected with energetically active geological faults that, in the Egyptian religious tradition, were known as the sacred hills of the first time. In all, 64 of these were chosen. The distance between pyramids belonging to the complex was 5,000 kilometers. The dolmens, which, like the chambers of the pyramids, acted as resonators, amplifying particular energy flows, were placed directly on these faults, their openings facing a distant object belonging to the complex, forming an energy-carrying circuit. The pyramids, meanwhile, were constructed with a strict north-south orientation to their sides.